The first lie I told after coming back from the dead was not dramatic. It was not whispered over a grave, screamed in a courtroom, or carved into a mirror with shaking hands. It was one tiny sentence, spoken through strawberry lip gloss while a woman with rhinestones glued to her reading glasses asked me whether I understood the rules of the Aurelia National Pageant. I said, "Yes, ma'am, completely," and signed my name at the bottom of the contestant honesty pledge as if my fingers were not trembling hard enough to tear the paper. Across the registration hall, Camille Arden laughed for the photographers with my old crown already shining in her eyes. She had not stolen it yet, not in this life. She had not taken my platform speech, had not slipped my allergy medication into my water bottle before preliminaries, had not cried on live television while accusing me of lying about my scholarship hours, had not watched my title get revoked, my contract canceled, my mother's medical fundraiser buried under headlines calling me a fraud. None of that had happened yet. The ballroom still smelled of fresh flowers, hot stage lights, and expensive hairspray. The pageant director still called me Miss Briar County, instead of the disgraced finalist. My mother still sat in the second row with both hands wrapped around her purse, alive, proud, unaware that in another version of this week she would spend her last hospital days trying to apologize for believing my cousin over me. And Camille, beautiful Camille, with her honey blonde curls, white satin blouse, and harmless little dimples, was leaning over the registration table pretending she could not find her ID. That was how she had fooled everyone the first time, with helplessness. She made theft look like confusion, cruelty look like nerves, and greed look like a wounded girl's last chance. In my first life, I had rushed to help her, handed her my spare copies, defended her to the staff, and even lent her the safety pin that held my contestant badge in place. In this life, I smiled, capped my pen, and watched her lie to the woman in rhinestone glasses. Because the form she was signing was not the same form she thought it was. And the crown she wanted so badly was going to become a noose of diamonds around her throat. A pageant crown is heavier than people think. Before I died, I believed it was a symbol, a glittering promise that a girl from a town nobody bothered to pronounce correctly could walk under theater lights and be seen as more than her father's debts, more than her mother's illness, more than the quiet scholarship student who worked closing shifts at a bridal shop and studied interview questions on the bus. When I first entered Aurelia, I did not care about being the prettiest girl in the room. That was Camille's dream. Mine was the ambassador scholarship attached to the title, full tuition for graduate public policy, national speaking contracts, travel stipends, medical insurance for a family member under the Foundation's Dependent Assistance Clause. I wanted that last part so badly I could taste it. My mother's kidney treatments were swallowing us whole, and every hospital letter that arrived with a red stamp felt like a countdown. Aurelia's winner did not just get flowers and a sash. She got a platform, money, visibility, and a board of wealthy sponsors who could open doors locked to girls like me. So in my first life, when Camille cried in my bedroom 3 days before finals and confessed that her own pageant director had lost her volunteer forms, I believed her. When she begged me to let her photocopy my platform binder so she could understand the structure, I said yes. When she spilled foundation on my opening nightgown and sobbed until I promised not to tell, I said yes. When she borrowed my backup heels, my hairpins, my interview statistics, my speech coach's notes, my sponsor contact list, and finally my mercy, I said yes every single time. By the night of the national final, Camille knew every private weakness I had because I had handed them to her wrapped in ribbon. She knew my mother's dialysis schedule. She knew I panicked when cameras pushed too close. She knew I carried antihistamines because artificial floral spray made my throat tighten. She knew the exact sentence I planned to say if the judges asked why health equity mattered to me, because dignity should not depend on the postcode printed beside your name. She repeated that sentence on stage 10 minutes before I could, with tears shining perfectly under her lashes, and the audience stood for her. Then she took my crown without even winning it. In the first life, I was announced as Aurelia National Queen. I remember the roar before I remember the music. I remember my mother standing too fast and grabbing the chair in front of her because her legs had gone weak. I remember the crown pressing into my hair and the outgoing queen whispering, "Breathe, sweetheart." I had one hand over my mouth, the other clutching the bouquet, and for 16 whole seconds I thought every sacrifice had become worth it. Then Camille collapsed. Not fainted delicately, not stumbled from disappointment, but collapsed with a sound that cut through the applause like glass breaking. Cameras swung. My crown became background glitter. Camille lay on the stage steps sobbing that she could not stay silent anymore, that she loved me too much to watch me build a future on a lie, that the foundation deserved to know I had forged my volunteer hours, hidden a paid modeling contract, and submitted an eligibility form that was not mine. She had documents, of course. Camille always had documents. The first was a copy of my platform portfolio with my signature copied badly enough to look desperate, not badly enough to look fake. The second was a modeling contract I had never seen before, with my face pasted from an old bridal shop ad. The third was a contestant disclosure form claiming I had been paid for campaign work by a county health clinic, which would have violated the pageant's conflict policy. I screamed that it was not mine. Nobody heard me because Camille was shaking in the arms of a judge, whispering. I tried to protect her. By midnight, the title was suspended. By morning, sponsors were demanding distance. By the end of the week, Camille had been named provisional ambassador because she was the runner-up and the only finalist brave enough to uphold integrity. By the end of the month, my mother's assistance application was denied due to reputational review. By winter, she was dead. By spring, I was a cautionary headline in pageant forums, a girl strangers dissected with cruel little comments. Too ambitious, too polished, always suspicious, when poor girls climbed too fast. And the last thing I heard before my own car slid off a rain-slick bridge was Camille's interview playing from the radio, her voice soft as silk as she said, I still pray Evelyn finds accountability. I never wanted the crown. I only wanted the truth. That was the memory sitting behind my smile as I watched Camille pretend to search her handbag at registration. Rebirth did not arrive with instructions. One moment, I was drowning inside crushed metal with river water filling my mouth. The next, I was 23 again, wearing the navy registration dress I had bought secondhand, standing under chandeliers shaped like frozen rain. My first instinct was not revenge. It was terror. My knees nearly gave way when I saw my mother alive, texting me a string of clapping emojis from the lobby because she had promised not to hover. Then I saw Camille. She was at table 3, head tilted, lower lip caught between her teeth, while the volunteer asked for her residency verification. I swear I packed it, she said, patting her purse. Maybe Evelyn has a copy? We came together. There it was, the hook. In the first life, I had walked over before anyone called me, opened my folder, and given Camille the extra county residency letter my aunt had requested, just in case, because our family believed preparation was selfish unless shared with Camille. That letter had become the root of the fraud. She used my extra documents to build a shadow file under a different address, then later claimed I had manipulated mine. This time, I waited until the volunteer glanced at me. Evelyn. Camille called, voice bright with embarrassment. You have the folder Aunt Leora made, right? Every instinct trained into me by family guilt told me to help. Every scar from the life she had burned told me to let the silence breathe. I placed my own folder against my chest and said, warmly enough for the cameras, I only have my originals. The handbook said we shouldn't carry anyone else's paperwork. The volunteer nodded approvingly. Camille's smile froze for half a heartbeat. It was tiny, almost invisible, but I saw it. The first crack in the mask. Then she laughed, recovered, and said she must have left the copy in the car. She did not go to the car. She pulled a folded form from the side pocket of her purse and signed it so quickly her bracelet flashed like a blade. The thing about pageants is that the public only sees the polished surface, the gowns, the interview smiles, the crown moving from one perfect head to another. Behind that surface is paperwork sharp enough to draw blood. Contestants sign disclosures for age, residency, education, marital status, criminal history, paid contracts, political endorsements, professional representation, family connections to judges, charity claims, medical accommodations, sponsorships, and conduct agreements. Most girls skim because they are nervous. Camille skimmed because she thought she had already arranged the real game elsewhere. In the first life, I had not understood why she was so calm about missing documents. Now I did. She had 2 files. The beautiful one, prepared by my aunt's friend on the regional committee, showed Camille as eligible, 24 but within the special graduate division, local resident, no paid pageant coaching contracts, no undisclosed sponsors, no relation to any judge, no disciplinary actions. The ugly one was the truth. She was 26, had been paid by a cosmetics sponsor to wear their products in preliminaries, had accepted coaching from a judge's sister, and had already been warned by the state pageant board for falsifying volunteer hours 2 years earlier. But the ugliest part, the part that would not merely disqualify her but destroy her, was not age or sponsorship. It was the Form C9 medical accommodation disclosure. Camille had used my mother's diagnosis in her application narrative, claiming she was the primary caregiver of a parent undergoing renal treatment and that her platform grew from watching my mother wait for dignity. Her mother, my Aunt Leora, was alive, wealthy, healthy, and currently at the hotel spa complaining about steam room temperature. My mother was the sick one. In my first life, Camille had stolen even that. She had turned my mother's pain into interview gold, then stood beside her casket in a black dress, and accepted condolences from sponsors who believed she had lost the parent from her speech. This time, when Camille signed the packet, I noticed the corner of Form C9 under her palm. Same lavender paper. Same little checkbox for dependent care, hardship. Same fraud waiting to bloom. I did not expose her at registration because exposure is only useful when the right people are watching. Dragging Camille down in a hallway would have made me look jealous. Our family would have closed around her. The pageant staff would have treated it as a cousin dispute, and Camille would have cried hard enough to wash away the ink. I needed a stage larger than her performance. More importantly, I needed proof that could not be turned into another accusation against me. In the first life, I had learned too late that truth without timing becomes noise. So I became helpful, but only in ways that left fingerprints. When Camille asked for my platform statistics, I sent her a public link with a tracking extension my friend Priya had once used for campaign newsletters. When she asked to borrow my old volunteer certificate template, I gave her a version with a tiny formatting error in the footer, one I had already documented in an email to myself. When my aunt called that night and told me family meant not embarrassing Camille over paperwork, I put her on speaker while my laptop recorded. When Camille came to my hotel room with wet eyes and asked whether I still had the essay about my mother's treatment journey because reading yours helps me understand my own platform language, I opened the door, hugged her, and handed her a printed copy with 3 deliberate phrases changed. Not enough to ruin the writing. Enough to identify the theft. I watched her tuck it into her tote bag between a pair of nude heels and a folder stamped with the logo of Maribel Trent, the pageant's most feared private coach. Maribel was also the sister of Judge Cashin Trent, head of final interview scoring. Camille had sworn in her disclosure that she had no coaching relationship connected to any judge. When she hugged me goodbye, her perfume smelled like white peaches and money. "You're the best, Stevie," she said. "I don't know what I'd do without you." I almost answered honestly, "You would have had to become yourself." The first pattern interruption came 2 days later, during the philanthropy breakfast, when Camille used the wrong mother. She had been seated at the sponsor table with the hospital foundation, wearing pale blue and speaking softly about health equity. I was 3 tables away pretending to butter a croissant while Priya, who had flown in as my social media helper and unofficial witness, kept her phone angled toward Camille's chair. Priya had not believed in reincarnation when I told her. She had believed in revenge immediately. "So we're proving fraud before she frames you," she had said, opening 3 spreadsheets like a general unsheathing knives. "Great. I've always wanted a villain arc with formatting." Now she nudged my ankle beneath the table as Camille placed a hand over her chest and told an elderly sponsor, "When my mother was turned away from treatment because our county clinic lacked resources, I promised I would change the system." The sponsor gasped. Camille lowered her lashes. My fork stopped halfway to my plate. That story was mine, but twisted. My mother had never been turned away. She had been delayed, transferred, buried under referrals and treated like a number by offices too understaffed to care. The truth was painful enough. Camille had inflated it because she did not understand that real suffering rarely arrives in clean, dramatic sentences. Priya's phone captured the whole exchange. The sponsor asked, "Is your mother here tonight?" Camille smiled sadly and said, "She wanted to be, but treatment days are unpredictable." Across the room, my actual mother was at the buffet, trying to choose between melon and pineapple while wearing the pearl earrings I had begged her to save for finals. I could have stood up then. The rage hit so hard my vision sharpened. But Camille was not crowned yet. The form had not surfaced yet. So I swallowed my anger with cold coffee and let her keep digging. Camille's brilliance was never talent. It was appetite. She watched people the way pageant coaches watched posture, not to admire, but to copy. After the breakfast, she began collecting pieces of me faster, as if my refusal at registration had made her hungrier. She complimented my interview dress, then bought the same one in cream. She asked which judge seemed warmest, then repeated my answer to 3 other contestants as if it were her insight. She overheard me telling Priya that my final answer for the onstage question would center on dignity rather than charity, and by dinner, Camille was telling a sponsor, "Charity is what the powerful give when they feel generous. Dignity is what systems owe before anyone asks." Priya nearly choked on sparkling water. "Did she just steal your sentence with better earrings?" she whispered. "Let her," I said, though my hands were shaking under the table. That became my rule. Let her. Let her take the sentence, the color palette, the posture, the platform language, the camera angle. Let her build a tower entirely out of things that had my measurements inside them. Because every theft made the final reveal cleaner. A girl accidentally inspired by her cousin is hard to condemn. A girl whose paperwork, speeches, sponsor statements, coaching invoices, and private messages all align into one pattern is impossible to save. Still, patience is not peace. Every night I went back to my hotel room and wrote down what she had taken. Not in bullet points. In full sentences, with times, places, witnesses, screenshots, and file names. I wrote like a woman building a courtroom from glitter dust. The pageant week shifted on Wednesday when my Aunt Leora arrived with a garment bag longer than a coffin and a smile made for knives. She swept into the contestant lounge wearing cream silk and the kind of diamonds people call tasteful when they are large enough to blind you. Camille jumped up, as if greeting royalty. My mother, who had come to bring me tea because the hotel coffee tasted burned, stiffened beside the vending machine. In my first life, Aunt Leora had made herself the wounded family mediator after Camille's accusation. She had told reporters she loved both girls, then leaked my childhood financial records to prove I had motive to cheat. Now she kissed the air beside my cheek and said, "Evelyn, darling, you look tired. Are you eating?" Translation: "You look beatable." Then she turned to my mother with a pitying softness that made my teeth ache. "Mara, you shouldn't push yourself. Camille told me treatment weeks are difficult." My mother blinked. Treatment weeks. Camille's face flashed white, then pink. I stepped between them smoothly and said, "Camille has been very moved by your strength, Mum. She's been speaking about kidney care all week." My aunt's eyes narrowed because she heard the trap, but she did not know its shape. Camille laughed too loudly. "I just mean Aunt Mara inspires all of us. The platform is family health advocacy, not specifically renal access." I finished. "That's what your Form C9 says, right?" The lounge went quiet around us, not completely, but enough that several contestants looked over. Camille's smile held. "I'm not sure what you mean." I smiled back. "Probably nothing. So many forms." Priya, from the couch, pretended to edit a photo while recording every second. Aunt Leora touched Camille's elbow, a warning disguised as comfort. My mother looked at me, confused, and I squeezed her hand once. Later. "Not now." If I told her then, she would have stormed into the director's office with her oxygen quiet fury and ruined the timing. My mother was gentle, not weak. People confused the two at their own risk. The sabotage began that night because Camille was frightened. In the first life, She had been confident enough to frame me only after winning the audience. In this one, my little comments were making her sloppy. I returned from rehearsal to find my hotel room door not fully latched. Nothing obvious had been destroyed. That was Camille's style. She preferred damage that could be mistaken for coincidence. My interview notebook was where I had left it, but the paper edges were slightly misaligned. My emergency gown kit was still in the drawer, but the needle packet had been opened and one needle was missing. The water bottle beside my bed had the seal pressed down too neatly. Priya, who had insisted on hiding a small camera inside a tissue box after the first suspicious housekeeping call, plugged the memory card into her laptop and smiled without humor. "Your cousin needs better crime training," she said. On the footage, Camille entered with a staff keycard borrowed from a pageant volunteer she had been flirting with all week. She photographed my notebook, opened my wardrobe, sprayed something inside my gown bag, then replaced my water bottle with another one from her tote. The old Evelyn would have cried. The new Evelyn put on gloves, bagged the bottle, photographed the gown, and called not the pageant director, but an outside notary service Priya had found 2 blocks away. By midnight, we had a notarized evidence packet, a digital backup, and a courier receipt to an attorney who specialized in competition integrity disputes. I still did not report her to the pageant. Priya stared at me like I had lost my mind. "She could hurt you." "She already did," I said. "This time she has to do it where everyone can see." Thursday's closed interview was where Camille almost won again. Pageant interviews are strange little pressure chambers. 5 judges, 1 contestant, 7 minutes to compress an entire life into clean convictions and warm eye contact. In my first life, I had been honest. Not messy, not naive, just honest enough to be human. I told them policy mattered because systems decide whether vulnerable people are rescued early or apologized to after harm is done. They liked me. They scored me highest. Then Camille took my answer, sharpened it, cried at the right moment, and became a story. This time, when I walked into the interview room, I did something different. I did not perform pain. Judge Cashin Trent leaned back and asked, "Miss Bryer County, your platform is medical dignity in rural communities. Why is this personal?" In the first life, I had spoken of my mother immediately. Now I said, because I spent too long believing personal pain was the only way people would care. It is not. A system should not require contestants to parade family wounds before it funds solutions. The room shifted. One judge lowered her pen. Another looked up sharply. Cashin smiled in that polished way men smile when they think a woman has stepped outside the expected script. "So, you object to personal storytelling and advocacy?" "No," I said. "I object to stolen suffering being treated as authenticity." His pen paused. He did not know I knew about Maribel. He did not know that Camille's invoices were already sitting in a time-stamped folder with his sister's business logo. He only knew my answer had teeth. When I left, Camille was waiting outside in a white suit almost identical to my navy one. "How was it?" she asked. "Clarifying," I said. She entered with my old sentence ready in her mouth. I knew because 5 minutes later, through the thin wall by the water station, I heard her voice tremble beautifully. When my mother was denied dignity, I learned that health care is not charity. Priya's eyes widened. I whispered, "Good girl." By Friday afternoon, my mother knew enough to be angry, and not enough to stop me. I told her in the chapel garden behind the hotel, where the pageant girls took soft focus photos beneath ivy arches and pretended they were not checking each other's angles. My mother sat on a stone bench with her scarf tied under her chin because the wind made her cold even in summer. I did not tell her I had died. I did not tell her I had watched hospital bills outlive her. Some truths are too large to hand someone when they still have to survive the day. I told her Camille was lying about her illness, using her treatment story, and planning to accuse me if challenged. For a moment, Mum did not move. Then she laughed once, a sound with no amusement in it. Leora always said Camille deserved a platform because she knew how to shine. She looked toward the hotel, where banners rippled above the entrance. Grace, service, integrity. I suppose stealing someone else's pain is one way to glow. I knelt in front of her, suddenly 10 years old again. I need you to trust me, even if it looks like I'm letting her win. Her eyes searched mine. My mother had spent her life reading quiet things, the tremor in a doctor's voice, the politeness in a bill collector's threat, the difference between a daughter tired from work and a daughter tired from carrying fear. Will it hurt you? She asked. Not the way last time did, I said before I could stop myself. She frowned, but she did not press. Instead, she took the little silver bracelet from her wrist and fastened it around mine. Then stand straight. People are crueler when they think you are already bending. That bracelet became my anchor. When Camille walked past us 10 minutes later wearing my stolen interview sentence like perfume, I touched the silver links and smiled. The final rehearsal delivered the second pattern interruption. Camille did not just want my crown, she wanted my fall preserved on camera. During on-stage question practice, the production crew tested live feeds, camera marks, and contestant walk paths. Camille had arranged herself 2 places behind me in the lineup, close enough to whisper without being seen. You should withdraw, she murmured while the host rehearsed the winner announcement. Her smile never moved. Before something humiliating happens. I stared forward at the empty theater. Thousands of velvet seats curved into darkness. Above them, the crown-shaped lighting rig glowed faintly, waiting. Is that advice or confession? I asked. Camille laughed under her breath. It's mercy. You're exhausted, Evie. Everyone can see it. Your mother's sick, your platform is too sad, and the judges don't like desperate girls. There it was, the voice beneath the sugar. In my first life, I heard it only after she had already won. In this life, hearing it early felt almost like being gifted a map. You're right, I said softly. Desperation makes people careless. She leaned closer. Then be careful. At that exact moment, the assistant stage manager called my name for the practice question. I stepped into the light and was handed a card. Miss Briar County, the host read. What responsibility does a public title holder have when personal ambition conflicts with public integrity? The question was random. It was also perfect enough to feel like the universe leaning forward. I looked past the empty seats, past the cameras, past Camille's reflection in the black stage floor. A title holder should remember that a crown magnifies character. If she is honest, it gives her reach. If she is fraudulent, it gives her nowhere to hide. The crew clapped politely because rehearsal applause is cheap. Camille did not clap at all. By late Friday morning, Camille decided to change tactics from stealing to planting. The first planted thing was a rumor. It reached me through a contestant from Northlake who looked as if she would rather swallow a curling iron than repeat it. I don't believe it, she said, cornering me near the service elevator while I balanced garment bags over both arms. But people are saying you had a private sponsor pay your entry fees and that you promised them a platform mention if you won. I thanked her for telling me, watched her flee, and then stood very still until Priya came out of the elevator holding 3 iced coffees and one expression of immediate violence. Who do I destroy? She asked. The rumor was elegant because it echoed the conflict policy Camille had planned to use against me in the first life. If enough people repeated it before finals, even proof of Camille's lies might look like mutual mud. Pageant scandals thrive on confusion. If everyone seems dirty, the guilty survive by becoming just one stain among many. So we traced the rumor backward instead of denying it forward. Priya found the first public whisper in a private contestant group chat, posted by a volunteer named Becca who had borrowed her staff keycard to Camille the night before. Becca claimed she overheard me, admitting sponsor pressure, outside the wardrobe room. The wardrobe hallway had cameras. Not official pageant cameras. Those were mysteriously turned away for privacy. Hotel security cameras, however, covered the vending machine reflection near the door. Priya had befriended the night manager on day 1 by fixing a printer jam and complimenting his catwalk screen, which meant by lunch we knew Becca had never been in that hallway when she claimed. Camille had. Aunt Leora had too. On muted footage, my aunt handed Becca a little white envelope near the emergency exit. It could have been cash. It could have been tickets. It could have been a handwritten prayer. We did not need to guess. We only needed the timestamp. I sent a single message to the pageant's independent ethics email, the one buried on page 37 of the contestant handbook where no one ever looked. Potential staff influence incident. Supporting evidence preserved. Request formal retention of all hotel and pageant surveillance from 11 p.m. Thursday through 1 p.m. Friday. I did not accuse Camille by name. That mattered. Accusations can be dismissed as emotion. Preservation requests make institutions nervous. 2 hours later, every staff member received a reminder that document tampering, contestant access violations, and undisclosed gifts could result in immediate removal. Camille read the notice while sitting across from me in the makeup room. Her mascara wand hovered in midair. I pretended not to notice. The second planted thing was almost beautiful in its cruelty. During the alumni luncheon, where former title holders told us how sisterhood had changed their lives while sponsors checked their phones beneath the table, the foundation chair invited each finalist candidate to write a private note to the girl they admired most that week. The notes would be sealed and given after finals as encouragement keepsakes. In my first life, I had written to Camille. I told her she was brave, luminous, and deserving of every good thing waiting for her. After my disgrace, she posted a photo of that note with a caption. Even before the truth came out, I loved her enough to hope she chose honesty. Thousands of strangers used my kindness as proof that her betrayal must have hurt her too. This time, when the little cream cards were passed around, Camille watched me from the next table. She expected sentiment. She needed it. A villain is easiest to sell when she has first written herself as the jealous one. I uncapped my pen and wrote slowly. Camille, I hope tonight gives you exactly what you have earned, in the clearest possible light. Evelyn. It looked kind of photographed from far away. It read like a blessing to anyone who did not know us. To Camille, when she stole it later from the collection basket before the notes were sealed, it must have felt like a threat. I know she stole it because Priya's tracker was beneath the sticker on the envelope. I know she read it because 37 seconds after the envelope entered the restroom with her, my phone received the location ping and Camille emerged with her lipstick smudged at one corner, the way it always did when she chewed her mouth in panic. At the luncheon table, the alumni queen beside me asked whether I was nervous for finals. A little, I said. Mostly I'm curious what people do when they get what they asked for. She laughed, thinking I was talking about stage dreams. I was thinking about Camille holding a crown while every lie she had signed turned around and recognized her. The form itself surfaced because paper has a memory, and Camille had trusted people to forget that. Pageant registration used two systems: the glossy contestant portal everyone saw, and the ugly compliance archive nobody discussed unless something went wrong. In the first life, when my title was suspended, the board claimed the archive showed inconsistencies in my disclosure packet. I never got access. My lawyer, who I could barely afford, requested records and received redacted scans too late to matter. In this life, I did not wait until after damage. Priya had an older cousin named Syra who worked in non-profit audit compliance, the kind of woman who wore linen blazers, spoke softly, and made executives sweat by asking where numbers came from. Syra did not hack anything. She did something more terrifying. She read the rules. Under Aurelia's own contestant policy, any finalist could request confirmation that her submitted records had been received and locked without alteration before final scoring. The policy existed to protect the pageant from contestants claiming missing paperwork after losing. It also meant I could request a chain of custody confirmation for any document that affected comparative eligibility, including conflict disclosures involving another contestant, if that contestant's claim overlapped my verified platform materials. Camille's medical hardship claim overlapped mine because she had used my mother's diagnosis. Syra drafted the request in language so polite it felt lethal. We attached proof of my mother's actual treatment verification, proof Camille had publicly described the same illness as belonging to her household, and a statement that I did not consent to any use of my family medical circumstances in another contestant's eligibility narrative. The request went to the independent compliance officer, not Helena Rowe, not the pageant director, not anyone who owed Aunt Leora favors. By Friday at 4:18 p.m., The officer replied that a sealed review had been opened and all relevant original forms had been pulled from archive. That was the red folder I later saw walking toward the stage. That was the first breath of the form surfacing. Not because I snatched it from Camille's hands, but because I forced the institution to open its own locked drawer before it could pretend the drawer did not exist. Friday evening included a family dinner I had forgotten from my first life, because nothing obviously terrible happened there. That was how much I had missed. Aunt Leora reserved a private room at the hotel restaurant to calm everyone before finals, which meant she wanted a room without contestants, cameras, or witnesses she could not control. My mother wanted to skip it. I asked her to come. Priya came too, introduced as my media assistant, and Aunt Leora's smile tightened so severely I worried for her cheek muscles. Camille arrived late in a pale pink dress, apologizing to the air, and placed a gift bag beside my plate.
"For tomorrow," she said.
I know things have felt tense. Inside was a silk scarf, blue with tiny white flowers. In the first life, I wore that scarf to breakfast the morning after finals while reporters shouted questions about fraud. Photos of me clutching it had run under headlines about pageant cousin rivalry, and Camille later claimed she gave it to me as a peace offering after suspecting I had lied. This time, I lifted it from the bag and admired the fabric. "It's lovely," I said. "Is there a card?" Camille blinked. "A card? For the keepsake box. I'm documenting all gifts this week since the handbook requires disclosure for anything over $25. Priya made a tiny choking sound into her water glass. Aunt Leora set down her fork. "Don't be absurd. It's a family gift. The rules don't exempt family," I said gently. Actually, that's been a theme. The room chilled. Camille reached for the scarf. "If it makes you uncomfortable, forget it." I let her take it back. That mattered too. Later, when she tried to claim I had accepted undisclosed gifts from her and Aunt Leora, the gift was not in my possession, not on my disclosure log, and not in any photograph except Priya's very clear image of Camille removing it from the table herself. After dinner, as we left, Aunt Leora caught my arm near the hallway. Her nails pressed through my sleeve. "You think being difficult makes you strong," she whispered. "But girls who embarrass their family end up alone." I looked down at her hand until she released me. "Girls who protect fraud end up subpoenaed," I said. Her face changed. Just a flicker. Enough. The last private trap came after midnight, when Camille sent a message asking me to meet her in the empty ballroom. In my first life, I had gone because she said she wanted to apologize before finals. She cried, hugged me, and somehow my phone ended up in her purse long enough for a fabricated message to appear in my sent folder, one that looked like I had threatened her. This time, I went with Priya walking 10 paces behind me in socks because heels clicked too loudly on marble. The ballroom was half dark, all the chairs stacked, the runway stage bare except for tape marks glowing faintly under work lights. Camille stood near the center in a robe over her pajamas, looking smaller without lashes and earrings. For 1 second, I understood why people protected her. Fragility is a costume too, and she wore it beautifully. "I don't want tomorrow to be ugly," she said. "Then stop making it ugly." Her eyes filled instantly. "Why are you treating me like an enemy? I know we're competing, but you've been cold all week. People notice." There it was, the opening line of a recording meant to make me sound cruel. I glanced toward the mirrored wall where her phone sat half hidden behind a floral riser.
"People notice a lot," I said.
Like missing keycards, coaching invoices, medical stories that belong to someone else. Camille went still. I could almost hear her recalculating. "You're paranoid. Then you have nothing to worry about." She stepped closer. "If you try to ruin me, I'll tell them you helped. I'll tell them you gave me the wording, the forms, everything. Who do you think they'll believe? The poised one or the bitter one?" I wanted to say the dead one, but that truth belonged to a universe she could not understand. Instead, I looked at her phone in the mirror and raised my voice just enough for its microphone. "Camille, I have never authorized you to use my mother's illness, my platform materials, my volunteer documents, my hotel room, my wardrobe notes, or my personal statements. Please do not contact me privately about this again."
It was not natural dialogue.
It was a legal fence built out loud. Camille realized too late that her own recording had caught it. Her face hardened into something almost relieved because masks are tiring and hatred is easier. "You were always so dramatic," she said.
No.
"I was always too generous." Priya coughed once from the hallway, our signal that enough had been captured. I walked away before Camille could cry her way into another scene. Final night did not begin with music. It began with a zipper snapping. My official evening gown, the emerald one I had altered for months, split down the back 30 minutes before lineup. The zipper teeth had been cut almost clean through, weakened enough to survive fittings and fail under pressure. In the first life, this would have destroyed me. I would have sobbed, begged staff for a sewing kit, walked out shaken, and given Camille the pleasure of watching me look less composed. In this life, I looked at the ruined gown, then at Priya, who was already grinning like a fox in a jeweler's store. Please tell me the ugly gold backup is not the plan.
I unzipped the second garment bag.
Inside hung a black velvet gown with no rhinestones, no pageant sparkle, no desperate attempt to look like anyone else on that stage. It was my mother's old concert dress, recut with a clean neckline and a slit that moved like shadow. Pageant girls are trained to choose color, so judges can remember them.
Il shows absence.
When I stepped into the hallway, conversation stopped for one breath too long. Camille, dressed in ivory crystal lace suspiciously close to the sketch I had left visible in my notebook, stared at me as if I had changed the language of the competition without warning. "Black," she said, smiling tightly. "Bold choice." "So is white," I said, letting my gaze travel once from her stolen silhouette to the pearl pins copied from my rehearsal board. The night moved fast after that. Opening number, swimsuit, talent showcase, platform montage. Camille was flawless in the way imitation can be flawless when it has no soul interrupting the surface. She used my hand gesture during the health equity video. She used my pause before the word dignity. She even wore a silver bracelet like my mother's, probably purchased from the hotel boutique after seeing mine. I felt anger, yes, but under it was something steadier. Every copied detail was another thread tying her to the trap. Then came the top 5, and for the first time all week, the pageant tried to knock me off script without Camille's help. The host opened the envelope, smiled at the audience, and called the finalists one by one. Miss Havenport, Miss Vale City, Miss Northlake, Miss Arden County, Camille. Then he paused before the final name. In my first life, this was where he had called me. The applause had hit my chest like a wave. This time, his eyes flickered toward the judges' table. And Miss Solène Bay. Not me. The audience applauded. My mother's face went still. Priya's mouth dropped open. Camille turned her head just enough for me to see the smile she was fighting. For one raw second, Rebirth vanished, and I was only a woman standing in stage lights after being erased. I had expected to make top 5. I had scored high enough in every tracked category. We had proof Camille had cheated, yes, but the plan assumed I would still be visible when the reveal happened. Then I saw Cashin Trent at the judges' table, not looking at me, and understood. He had buried my score. Whether for Camille, for Maribel, or to protect the image of the panel, he had nudged me out before the final question. Priya later told me that was the moment she thought I would break. Instead, I did the one thing Camille had never prepared for. I applauded like I meant it, not politely.
Proudly.
I smiled at Solène Bay, who looked shocked enough to faint, and stepped back with the other eliminated contestants. Camille's expression soured because my humiliation had not fed her. She needed me visibly wounded. She needed tears, anger, one ugly face for the camera. I gave her grace, and it scared her. Backstage during the commercial break, chaos bloomed. Eliminated contestants changed shoes, production assistants shouted timing cues, hairspray fogged the mirrors, and somewhere a girl was crying because her earring had vanished. I stood in a corner with Priya, who was shaking with fury. They cut you. They actually cut you. Evelyn, we should release everything now. No, I said, watching Camille through the mirror. She was surrounded by handlers, glowing with the terror and joy of a thief who has reached the vault. If we release now, they call it bitterness because I lost. Priya swore. Then what? I touched the bracelet. Then she wins. Priya stared at me. That is not usually step one of a revenge plan. It is when the punishment requires possession. Across the room, Camille's eyes met mine in the mirror. She expected hatred. I gave her a small nod, almost congratulatory. Her shoulders relaxed. That was important. Fear makes criminals careful. Triumph makes them generous with mistakes. The final question round began, and I watched from the side monitor while Camille stepped to the microphone. Her question was about advocacy and truth.
Of course it was.
The universe had a cruel sense of theater. Camille placed one hand over her heart and delivered my answer from the chapel garden, the one I had said privately to my mother. People are crueler when they think you are already bending. A true advocate teaches vulnerable people to stand before systems that profit from their silence. My mother inhaled sharply beside me. She had come backstage during the break and heard it live. Her hand found mine, cold and thin. That was mine, she whispered. Not my sentence. Hers. The theft had finally reached a place even patience could not soften. I looked at the monitor, at Camille's perfect tear sliding down her perfect cheek, and said, yes. Now, everyone gets to know. The crown announcement felt slower than death. The host held the final envelope beneath the stage lights while the top 5 clasped hands in a glittering chain. Camille had positioned herself in the center, chin trembling, eyes lifted toward the rig as if heaven itself might descend to crown her. The second runner-up was called, then the first runner-up. Solène Bay, poor stunned Solène, took the silver bouquet with a smile that looked like relief. That left Camille. The host turned to her, voice swelling. Your new Aurelia National Queen is Miss Arden County, Camille Arden. The theater exploded. Confetti cannons fired gold paper into the air. Camille covered her mouth with both hands, collapsing inward just enough to appear overwhelmed, but not enough to disturb the cameras. The outgoing queen placed the crown on her head. The sash crossed her body. The bouquet filled her arms. For a moment, she had everything she had killed me for in another life. The crown, the applause, the scholarship, the sponsors, the story, my mother's pain shining from her lips. She looked toward me backstage, and there was no sweetness left in her face. Only victory. I smiled back. Not because I was calm, but because the pageant's compliance officer had just walked through the side door holding a red folder. Behind her came 2 members of the national board. The independent auditor Priya had couriered our packet to, and a woman I recognized from the first life only as a signature on the letter that revoked my title. Director Helena Rowe. In the first life, she had destroyed me with procedure. In this life, procedure was walking toward Camille. The first sign the audience noticed was not the compliance officer. It was the music cutting out. Crown music is designed to be unstoppable. Swelling strings, inspirational drums, the kind of sound that tells people emotion has been approved. When it died mid-chorus, the theater stumbled into awkward applause. Camille froze with the bouquet against her chest. The host's smile faltered. A stage manager whispered into his earpiece, and his face changed in a way no amount of television training could hide. Helena Rose stepped into the light without waiting for permission. She wore a black suit, no jewelry, and an expression that made the crown look suddenly childish. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, taking the spare microphone, we ask for your patience. The Aurelia National Board has received verified documentation requiring immediate review before the title can be certified. A murmur rolled through the room. Camille's hand tightened around the bouquet. The host tried to laugh. I'm sure we can handle any administrative matters after the broadcast. No, Helena said. One word. Clean as a door locking. Certification cannot proceed while eligibility is in question. Camille found her voice then, soft and wounded, because that had always been her strongest weapon. Is this about Evelyn? She asked, turning slightly so the cameras caught her profile. Because if my cousin is upset, I don't want this beautiful moment to become. Miss Arden, Helena interrupted. This is about your own signed forms. The words landed harder than any accusation I could have made. The audience quieted so sharply I heard confetti sliding off the stage.
A camera zoomed in.
Camille's face stayed beautiful, but the blood drained beneath the makeup. My forms, she repeated. There must be a misunderstanding. Helena opened the red folder. That is what we are here to determine. If you have never watched a liar realize the paper is alive, you might think panic looks loud. It does not at first. It looks like stillness. Camille stood under the crown she had not earned, unable to step forward or back, while Helena read from the original Form C9 she had signed at registration. Dependent medical hardship claimed under maternal renal treatment, primary caregiving duties listed, fundraising platform based on immediate household need. Then Helena read from the official medical verification field, blank, pending, not supplied. Then she read the witness note from the philanthropy breakfast, where Camille had stated on camera that her mother was in treatment. A sponsor in the front row gasped, loud enough to make people turn. Aunt Leora, sitting 3 seats away in cream silk, went rigid. The camera found her because live events are merciless when scandal smells expensive.
Camille tried to laugh.
I consider my aunt like a second mother. Evelyn's mother has been part of my life since childhood, and my wording may have been emotional. You listed the patient as Leora Arden, Helena said. Your biological mother. You also checked the box stating the dependent resided in your primary household and that you provided direct care at least 20 hours per week. Aunt Leora stood up. This is private family information, she snapped. Wrong move. The audience did not know what she was defending, only that she was defending something. Helena did not look at her. Additionally, Miss Arden denied any coaching relationship connected to a sitting judge. We have received invoices from Maribel Trent Coaching, dated within the restricted period, and communication confirming strategy sessions regarding final interview scoring. Judge Cashin Trent rose so quickly his chair scraped the floor. That sound was the beginning of his own fall. The crown on Camille's head trembled. Camille turned toward the judges, then the audience, then finally toward me. There it was, the old instinct searching for a person to frame. Evelyn gave me those documents, she said, voice breaking perfectly. She helped me prepare. She told me the forms were just technicalities. She said everyone exaggerates platform stories. I trusted her. My mother's grip tightened on my wrist, but I did not move. Helena looked toward the side stage. Miss Lorne, please remain where you are unless asked a direct question. I nodded. That was when Priya's work unfolded. The auditor stepped forward and displayed a timeline on the side screens, replacing the sponsor logos with cold evidence. Email from Camille requesting my essay file. Tracking link opened from Camille's laptop. Screenshot of Camille's volunteer certificate containing my altered footer error. Video still from the hotel room showing Camille entering with a borrowed keycard. Invoice from Maribel Trent Coaching paid by Aunt Leora's business account. Audio transcript of Aunt Leora pressuring me not to embarrass Camille over paperwork. Recording from the philanthropy breakfast. Not one piece was dramatic alone. Together, they became architecture. Camille's mouth opened, then closed. The theater was silent except for camera shutters and one contestant whispering, "Oh my God," near the wings. Helena read the final item. At 9:42 this evening, the board received the original registration scan of Form C9 submitted under Miss Arden's digital contestant profile, including metadata confirming it was uploaded from the device registered to Miss Arden before any document exchange with Miss Lorne. That was the form surfacing. Not a rumor, not a cousin's accusation, not an emotional confrontation. The pageant's own system had produced it, with Camille's login wrapped around it like a signature in blood. The crown was removed with less ceremony than a coat. That is the part no one tells you. Crowning takes music, lights, flowers, hands clasped in sisterhood, rehearsed tears, and a host speaking like history is paused. Uncrowning takes one board member stepping forward and saying, "For the integrity of the program, we must ask you to surrender the title pending final disciplinary action." Camille backed away.
No.
You can't do this on stage. Helena's face did not change. You made the statements on stage. I won. Her voice cracked, and for the first time all week she sounded young, not innocent, just young in the way cruel people sound when consequences arrive before they have prepared a speech. "The scores," asked the judges. I won. "Scores cannot certify an ineligible contestant," Helena said. The outgoing queen, pale and horrified, reached for the crown. Camille flinched, as if the girl had struck her. For one wild second, I thought she would run. Instead, she turned to the audience, tears spilling now without elegance. "This is because Evelyn hates me," she cried. "She has always hated that people love me. She set me up. In the first life, those words would have ruined me because I would have lunged at them. This time, I did nothing. I let the evidence stand where my anger wanted to." My stillness made her look louder. My mother stepped beside me, not into the light, just close enough that the backstage camera caught her face, tired, dignified, alive. Camille saw her and broke in a different way, because the woman whose illness she had stolen was watching. The outgoing queen lifted the crown from Camille's head. Confetti clung to Camille's hair like scraps of false gold. The sash came next. Then the bouquet. Applause did not follow. The silence was worse. People think public exposure feels satisfying all at once. It does not. It arrives in layers, and the first layer is grief. As Camille was escorted off stage, I did not feel triumph. I saw the girl who had slept over at my house when we were children, who had once stolen my blue nail polish and denied it with sparkles still wet on her fingers, who had learned from adults that wanting something badly enough made any lie forgivable. I saw Aunt Leora shouting into her phone, Cassian Trent surrounded by board members, Maribel's name spreading through the press row like spilled ink. I saw my mother sit down because the shock had made her legs weak. I wanted to be happy, and part of me was. Another part was standing in the wreckage of a life where none of this had happened soon enough. Helena Rowe approached me during the emergency broadcast break. "Miss Lorne," she said, and for a moment I heard the first life letter in her voice, the cold apology, the revoked title, the institutional cowardice. "The board owes you an apology. Based on preliminary review, we believe your scores were improperly affected. We will conduct a full audit before naming a certified title holder." Priya muttered, "Preliminary review my entire backside," but quietly enough that only I heard. Helena continued, "You may be asked to provide testimony." I looked at Camille's abandoned bouquet on a chair, petals bent under the stage lights. "I will." "Do you want security to escort you to a private room?" she asked. I almost said yes. Then I looked at my mother, who had once died believing the world had chosen Camille's tears over my truth. "No," I said. "I want to walk out through the lobby." The lobby after a scandal is a different country. Sponsors who had spent all week ignoring me suddenly found my name easy to pronounce. Contestants hugged me with varying degrees of sincerity and fear. Reporters hovered behind velvet ropes, calling questions they knew I would not answer yet. "Evelyn, did you know before tonight? Did your cousin steal your platform? Is your mother the patient named in the form? Will you accept the crown if the board offers it?" My aunt tried to reach us, near the marble stairs. Security blocked her, but not before she shouted, "You destroyed your own blood for a plastic crown." My mother stopped walking. The lobby quieted around us, because people love a family scene almost as much as they love justice. I thought Mum would ignore her. Instead, she turned. She looked small under the chandelier, scarf tied neatly, silver bracelet missing from her wrist because I wore it now. "No, Leora," she said, voice steady. "Your daughter tried to wear my illness like a costume." Evelyn only turned on the lights. Aunt Leora recoiled as if slapped. Cameras caught it. I wish I could say that did not matter to me. It did. Not because I wanted my aunt humiliated, but because my mother had been silent too often in rooms where wealth spoke over her. This time, everyone heard her. Priya guided us toward the side exit before reporters could swarm. Outside, summer rain glittered under the hotel awning, turning the pavement into black glass. My mother inhaled slowly. "I hated watching her wear that crown," she admitted. "So did I." "But you let her." "She needed to touch it," I said. So no one could pretend she didn't know what she was taking. The morning after, I woke to a hotel room full of flowers from people who had been silent while Camille was winning. White roses from the foundation board. Pink lilies from a sponsor who had never returned my emails. A dramatic arrangement of orchids from the Alumni Association with a card that said, "Your grace inspires us," as if grace were not mostly what women are praised for when they refrain from throwing chairs. My phone had become a furnace. There were messages from contestants, reporters, distant relatives, old classmates, pageant bloggers, health equity organizations, and 3 numbers I did not recognize offering crisis brand support. The top video online was not the crown being removed, but the moment my mother said, "Evelyn only turned on the lights." Someone had put soft piano music under it. Another account had slowed Camille's face as Helena said, "Your own sign forms," adding a zoom and red arrows like a crime documentary made by teenagers. Priya sat cross-legged on the carpet reading comments with the grim discipline of a battlefield medic. "Do not look," she ordered. "Half of them are calling you a queen, and the other half are trying to decide whether your facial expression at minute 2 proves you planned a coup." I looked anyway. That was my mistake. Praise can cut when it arrives in the same doorway as cruelty. For every person saying Camille deserved consequences, another asked why I had not spoken earlier if I knew. Why let her stand on stage? Why make the pageant ugly? Why humiliate another woman publicly? The old Evelyn would have internalized every question as proof she had done something wrong. The new one still felt the sting. I closed the phone and went to the bathroom, where the mirror lights made me look like a stranger wearing last night's eyeliner. For the first time since Rebirth, I cried. Not delicate tears. Ugly, silent, bent over crying that shook my ribs. I cried for the first life, for the version of my mother who had died under headlines, for the girl who thought kindness would protect her from someone who studied kindness as a weakness, for the awful knowledge that doing the right thing at the right time still left bruises. My mother knocked once and came in without waiting. She did not ask what was wrong. She sat on the closed tub lid and held out a wet washcloth. "You are allowed to hate how justice feels," she said. "People forget that." I pressed the cloth to my face. "Do you think I was cruel?" She thought before answering, which was why I trusted her. "Yes," she said softly. I flinched, but she took my hand. Cruel in the way a surgeon is cruel when rot has to be cut where everyone can see the wound. That is not the same as being wrong. That afternoon, Helena requested a recorded statement from me before the board finalized sanctions. Priya wanted lawyers, cameras, and possibly a small army. My mother wanted tea first, which somehow settled the matter. We met in a conference suite stripped of pageant decorations, just a long table, water glasses, legal pads, and the exhausted faces of people discovering integrity is more expensive after you have already sold tickets. Helena sat at the head with 2 board members, the compliance officer, and an attorney whose smile never reached his eyes. They asked me to recount the week from registration onward. I did, calmly, in order, without embellishment. I did not mention Rebirth. I said I had noticed inconsistencies because my family's medical circumstances were being referenced by another contestant. I said I preserved evidence because I feared retaliation. I said I did not confront Camille publicly because prior informal reporting channels appeared compromised by family pressure, staff access violations, and undisclosed coaching conflicts. The attorney asked whether I had strategically allowed events to proceed in order to maximize reputational harm to Miss Arden. Priya's pen snapped in her hand. I looked at the attorney and remembered every institution in my first life that asked why I had not been quieter, nicer, easier to disbelieve. I allowed your organization to follow its own process, I said. If that process only became visible on stage, that is because your organization scheduled the crowning before completing the integrity review. Helena's mouth tightened, but not with anger. The compliance officer looked down at her notes, as if hiding a smile. The attorney tried again. Did you have personal animosity toward Miss Arden? Yes, I said. Everyone looked up. Honesty can be its own pattern interruption. She stole my mother's illness, accessed my room, copied my materials, and tried to frame me. I dislike her very much. That does not make the evidence less true. After the statement, Helena walked me to the door. Most contestants would have denied animosity. Most contestants are taught that looking angry makes them less credible. And you, she asked. I glanced back at the table where my evidence packet sat thicker than the pageant handbook. I think women are allowed to be angry and accurate at the same time. The smallest consequence was also the one that stayed with me. Becca, the volunteer with the borrowed keycard, found me by the loading dock before she was sent home. She could not have been older than 19, with glitter still stuck to her temple and panic making her voice thin. I didn't know it was that serious, she said. Camille said you were cousins, and she just needed to leave you a surprise. Mrs. Arden gave me a thank you card. I didn't think. She stopped because there was no ending to that sentence that helped her. In my first life, I would have comforted her. I would have rushed to make her feel less guilty because other people's discomfort had always felt like a task assigned to me. This time, I let her stand inside it. You gave someone access to my room, I said. You helped start a rumor. Maybe you didn't know the whole plan, but you knew you were breaking rules. Her eyes filled. Will I be banned? Probably from volunteering this year. Maybe longer. She wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. I'm sorry. I believed she was, which was not the same as absolving her. That was another lesson Rebirth taught me. Remorse is not a refund. When she walked away, Priya asked if I felt bad. I watched Becca hand over her badge to security, shoulders folded inward. Yes, I said, but not enough to carry it for her. By then, I understood that accountability rarely arrives as one clean lightning strike. It comes as paperwork, awkward meetings, returned badges, corrected headlines, and people learning that I didn't mean harm is not a master key. The crown was only the brightest object in the room. The real victory was watching every hidden mechanism around it become visible. The official decision came 3 days later, though the internet had convicted Camille in 3 minutes. Aurelia National released a statement confirming that Camille Arden had been permanently disqualified for material falsification, undisclosed conflicts, misuse of medical hardship claims, unauthorized access to another contestant's materials, and conduct unbecoming of a title holder. Cashin Trent resigned before he could be removed. Maribel Trent's coaching business collapsed under refund demands and ethics complaints. Aunt Leora's company, which had quietly sponsored 3 regional pageants, lost its foundation partnership. As for the crown, the score audit showed what we already knew. I had ranked first before Cashin's altered panel adjustment pushed me below the top 5. The board offered to certify me as Aurelia National Queen in a private ceremony, to preserve dignity after an unfortunate public disruption. I laughed when I read that line. Preserve dignity. Institutions love dignity, most when they are asking victims to make less noise. Helena called personally. She sounded less cold without a microphone. You earned the title, Miss Lorne. Then certify it publicly, I said. The stripping was public. The apology can be too. There was a pause. That will be uncomfortable for the organization. Yes, I said. Integrity often is. Priya, sitting across from me with a victory donut, raised both thumbs. My mother pretended not to smile over her tea. The second ceremony happened 1 week later in the same theater, stripped of confetti and false suspense. No crown music.
No dramatic envelope.
Just Helena standing before the press and saying clearly that I had been the rightful winner, that my platform had been exploited, that my family's medical circumstances had been misused by another contestant, and that the organization had failed to protect the integrity it advertised. Then the outgoing queen placed the crown on my head again. It felt different this time. Not lighter.
Tua.
Camille asked to see me once before the disciplinary hearing. I almost refused. Then I remembered every interview where she had said she prayed for my accountability and decided I wanted to look her in the eye without cameras, without applause, without a crown between us. We met in a conference room at the hotel because neutral spaces are where guilty people hope emotions become negotiations. Camille arrived with no makeup, or makeup designed to look like none. Her hair was pulled back. Her eyes were swollen. For one irrational second, I felt the old tug of cousinhood, the childhood memory of sharing popcorn on my bedroom floor while rain hit the window. Then she spoke. Are you happy now? The tug snapped. I sat across from her. Not because of this. She laughed bitterly. You got everything. The crown, the sympathy, the sponsors. You made me look like a monster. No, I said. I let you speak into microphones. Her face twisted. You think you're better than me because you waited? That was crueler than confronting me. Maybe. The honesty surprised her. It surprised me too. But confronting you privately would have saved you from the truth you created. I did that too many times. Camille looked down at her hands. I needed the title. So did I. You had the sick mother story. You had the poor girl's story. You had something real. Her voice sharpened with resentment, not remorse. Do you know what it's like to be expected to shine when everyone knows you have no tragedy? They don't crown girls like me unless we bleed prettily. I stared at her, finally understanding the empty place where shame should have lived. Camille did not believe she had stolen my pain because she thought pain was just another pageant resource, unevenly distributed and available to those clever enough to package it. You could have built something honest, I said. You would have still been beautiful, talented,
Rich.
connected. That's not enough anymore, she whispered. There it was, the disease beneath the glitter. Not ambition. Emptiness. I stood. Then the crown would never have filled you. Life after the crown did not become a fairy tale, which is how I knew it was real. My mother still had treatment days. Bills still arrived. Some sponsors withdrew because scandal made them nervous. Better sponsors stepped in because public accountability made them interested. I used the scholarship to begin graduate study in health policy, but I also used the platform to demand changes inside Aurelia. Independent document audits before finals, conflict disclosures for judges' relatives, protected reporting channels for contestants, and a ban on scoring adjustments that could not be reviewed after the fact. The board resisted until Priya leaked, politely and legally, that several journalists were preparing a broader piece on pageant governance. Suddenly reform became a proud new chapter. I learned to let institutions save face only after they had changed the face they were saving. Camille disappeared from public view for a while. Her followers split into camps, those who called her a victim of pageant politics, those who called her a fraud, and those who made slow-motion edits of the crown being lifted from her head. I did not watch those more than twice, maybe 3 times. I am not a saint. Aunt Leora never apologized, but she stopped calling my mother by nicknames that sounded like Charity. Cashin tried to sue the board and withdrew when Discovery threatened to open his emails. Maribel rebranded as a confidence mentor and was immediately mocked off 3 platforms. Priya became my official communications director because she said any organization that survived us deserved a spreadsheet demon in heels. And me? I traveled to county clinics, not as a perfect queen with perfect answers, but as a woman who had learned that public grace without private boundaries is just another costume people will ask you to bleed in. On the final night of my reign, 1 year after Camille touched the crown for less than 5 minutes, I stood backstage with the next group of contestants waiting in a nervous, glittering line. A girl from a farming county clutched her platform binder so tightly the plastic cover bent. Another contestant whispered interview questions under her breath. A third stared at her reflection like she was trying to recognize the woman everyone expected her to become. I wanted to tell them everything, that pageants are beautiful and brutal, that ambition is not shameful but hunger without honor will eat the person carrying it, that paperwork matters, that kindness needs witnesses, that your story is not a community basket for anyone prettier, louder, richer, or more pitiful to pick through. Instead, when the nervous girl with the bent binder asked whether I had any advice, I adjusted the crown one last time and said, "Keep copies of everything, including yourself." She laughed because she thought it was a joke. It was not. Before stepping onto the stage, I touched my mother's silver bracelet, still looped around my wrist. She was in the audience again, healthier than last year, wearing pearl earrings and a blue dress that made her look like morning. Priya stood beside her, already filming too much. The lights rose. The host introduced me as Aurelia National Queen, health policy advocate, and the title holder whose reforms had changed the competition's integrity process nationwide. The applause came warm and full, but I no longer needed it to prove I was real. I walked to the microphone, looked out over the theater where I had once been erased, and smiled. A crown, I said, does not make a woman honest. It only gives the truth a better view.